Mashiach is a reality.
To me, it means ultimate goodness, the purpose of creation.
Mashiach is a time of peace, and it's also a time of inner harmony with our true nature, and our true nature is transcendental of the physical plane.
When we're going to be all having good thoughts and only goodness around, no more evil, no more jealousy, no more problems, really just concerned with the Torah and studying the Torah.
It is a feeling that emanates from within, that whatever deeds you do are done for goodness.
And to me, Mashiach means no more tears.
Moshiach, Moshiach, Moshiach. Oy, 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 oy. Moshiach, Moshiach, Moshiach. Oy, 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 oy. Moshiach, Moshiach, Moshiach. Oy, 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 oy. Moshiach, Moshiach, Moshiach. Oy, 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 oy.
Good evening and welcome. My name is Edward Goldberg, your moderator for tonight's program and panel discussion on Discover Mashiach, a forum on Mashiach and the imminent redemption, the concluding segment of a four-part series. Tonight's program is on the 11th day of the month of Nissan, and it coincides with and is in honor of the Lubavitcher Rebbe's 91st birthday, and people all around the world are celebrating this occasion. Tonight, we have three rabbis of the Lubavitch movement joining us. Rabbi Shmuel Kaplan, the Lubavitch regional representative for the state of Maryland. Rabbi Heschel Greenberg, the educational director for Chabad in Buffalo, New York, and adjunct professor of Jewish law and philosophy at the University of Buffalo. And Rabbi Moshe, director of the Montreal Torah Center Chabad Education Institute in Montreal, Canada. Good evening, rabbis.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Before we get into the meat of tonight's subject, the Mashiach, and specifically why the Lubavitch Hasidim and others believe that the Rebbe is the Mashiach, perhaps our panelists can share with us some of their personal sentiments regarding tonight's celebration on the Rebbe's 91st birthday.
Maybe we should begin by understanding the Rebbe's position in Jewish life today. Although we speak of him as the Lubavitcher Rebbe, he is the leader of the Lubavitch movement. In fact, the Rebbe is leader of all Jews around the world because his concern is for all Jews. The Rebbe has, from the first moment of his ascension to leadership of the Lubavitch movement, broadened the scope and focus of all of his activities. Every Jew mattered. He cared about every Jew, and that's why you find Lubavitch all over the world, sometimes at great personal sacrifice to the individual emissary, but all built on the direction and inspiration and guidance of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. To illustrate this, I recall some years ago when Prime Minister Menachem Begin, the former Prime Minister of Israel, came to the United States immediately after he was elected the first time to the office of Prime Minister. And someone in the press corps asked him, when he came to visit the Lubavitcher Rebbe, why are you coming here? What significance does it have to come to Crown Heights to see the Lubavitcher Rebbe on your first visit to the United States? And his answer was, my coming here is a mission on behalf of all Jews. The Lubavitcher Rebbe carries the burden and responsibility of all the Jewish people as much as I, if not more. And that's why I'm here. And I think that puts it the way it should be. The Rebbe has cared about all Jews, his concern is for all Jews, and that if you look at the things that he has done, he has led the direction of the Jewish people for the last 42 years.
I'd like to add to that. This is from a personal recollection as a rabbi in Buffalo, New York. I was very, very moved and impressed, even though I'm someone who has heard hundreds and maybe thousands of different stories of the Rebbe's involvement in in the lives of Jewish communities and of Jewish individuals. But here was a story that happened, very, very small incident, but it was a very, very powerful one at the same time. There was a woman in town, just a regular, simple Jewish woman who had written to the Rebbe about her father and mother and about their health, that it wasn't the greatest. And the Rebbe responded with a blessing, as is the usual custom for the Rebbe. A year later, the Rebbe wrote her a letter, and the Rebbe asked her, you know what, I haven't heard from you in the last year about your father or mother, and I take it that no news is good news, and I hope that they're well, and took a very, very personal interest in the welfare of this woman's parents. Now, the Rebbe was not responding to a letter. Now, the Rebbe gets tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of letters in the course of a year, that the Rebbe would take out time from his schedule, from all of the things that he's doing, leading all of Chabad institutions, just to find out how things are with this woman and this woman's mother. She wasn't a dignitary. She was just an average Jewish woman. And the Rebbe's interest was one of a father to a child. Now, I'm saying this at the same time that as a professor at the university, someone who teaches all different areas of Judaism, there's not one area of Judaism that I haven't been able to glean some of the most profound insights from the Rebbe's teachings. The Rebbe's teachings, which span several hundred volumes. In my house, I have a bookcase from the floor to the ceiling, just with a portion, not all of it. I don't have all of his writings, and not all in one place, covering every facet of Jewish scholarship, from biblical, Talmudic, mystical, philosophical, every aspect of Jewish knowledge. The Rebbe has not only contributed, but contributed some novel and profound insights. So at the same time that the Rebbe is constantly like an ever flowing spring of knowledge, at the same time his concern for every individual. That's what made the most profound impact on me, perhaps of all the other things that have happened. His interest in every individual is legendary.
Tonight, the 11th day of Nissan, the Rebbe's birthday, is very much a personal celebration for myself and many other Jews. I hail from Australia. In fact, second generation Australian. I sit here talking to you with a beard, with the yeshiva, solid Jewish education, at the point even where I can share this knowledge with others. And that's thanks to the Rebbe. Actually, it's interesting because the two rabbis sitting at my right, Rabbi Kaplan and Rabbi Greenberg, years ago were sent to Australia by the Rebbe as emissaries, and I was tutored by both of them. So here we are some years later, celebrating tonight's holiday, birthday, and bringing the Rebbe's message of the imminence of redemption to the world. I think that's a cause for celebration.
Thank you. Rabbi Kaplan, I'd like to ask you, we're celebrating the Rebbe's birthday, and it seems to be significant and important. Could you please explain what the significance is?
First, to put it in context, when people think of a birthday celebration, our culture generally has it as a celebration for everybody, secular in nature, and one doesn't really give it much significance. You know, people of distinction, of quality, don't celebrate their birthdays or any great events. But the fact is that the Rebbe has indicated to us in Judaism, birthday has a very important message. In addition to the fact that it's the time that you were born, we're not talking about that. A person is put on this world not merely to eat, drink, and sleep and have a good time. God has a plan for each individual. God gives one the potential to accomplish something in this world, to bring goodness into the world, to bring spirituality in the world, to bring holiness in the world. When a person is born, what that really means is that God has, if you will, let loose a new inspiration of goodness in the world, new holiness in the world. And God said, go ahead, here is an opportunity to have an impact on the world, to change the world in some way for good. And so when we speak of even an individual birthday, if we look at it as here, God put another mission on the world for accomplishment, that's cause for celebration. When we think of what it means on the Rebbe scale, where God took someone who would be a leader of the Jewish people and has changed the course and direction of the Jewish people, that was all set in motion from the time of birth. We actually find it by Moshe Rabbeinu. When Moses was born, We're told from the moment of his birth, it was a significant day. Nismal habayis kula oira. Sages tell us the house was illuminated in that day. Why the day when he was born? He was a small child. But because the spiritual power that God vested in him was there at that time when he was born, it illuminated the home spiritually. In a similar sense, the day of a birthday of a leader, of a Jewish leader, has an even greater impact than the birthday of any Jew. And the Rebbe has been very emphatic about that everyone should celebrate their birthday in order to bring that concept to the fore. Why am I here? Why did God put me on this earth? What am I accomplishing here? And so Yud Alef Nissan, this day, the 11th of Nissan, is a significant day, not just for the Rebbe, for all of us, because his accomplishments are all contained in the events that happened this day 92 years ago.
Having mentioned the accomplishment or spoken about the Rebbe and the work that he's done over the years, I'd like to invite you all now to watch a brief documentary on the Rebbe prepared by the Jewish Educational Media for the Hanukkah Live program.
Well, the first impression that I remember is the eyes of the Rabbi. Blue, penetrating eyes that express wisdom, awareness, and deep penetration.
The Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem M. Schneerson, is the Jewish leader of a worldwide movement that has established more than 1,500 institutions since 1940. From Alaska to Tasmania, Grenoble to Vienna, Dnepropetrovsk to Moscow, from Jerusalem to Morocco, the Rebbe's global imprint will be found in the educational, religious, social service, and rehabilitative agencies he has created in communities around the world. They serve as centers of resources, reaching out to those who need education, understanding, assistance, and advice.
It's very clear to everybody who knows something about the Rebbe that the Rebbe is not an usual figure in the world and among the Jewish people. He's a special personality and an exceptional personality with his own views, his own ways of acting. And therefore he's a Rebbe, and therefore he's the Lubavitcher Rebbe.
The greatest quality of a person like that is fearless leadership.
Considered a brilliant scholar and selfless leader by those who admire him, he holds 4 doctorates and was a graduate of the Sorbonne in Paris.
He has, first of all, a vast knowledge of almost everything that has been written within the Jewish world up to now. That is very, very rare. Very few people can boast even anything close to it. The material that he knows, if not by heart, but at least knows what is written in, is enormous. And it's astonishing always people that meet him, the detailed information, the detailed knowledge that he knows about things that they suppose are their own expertise.
Within the Jewish world, the Rebbe is the 7th leader of the Chabad Lubavitch movement, which originated 2 centuries ago in the tiny Russian town of Lubavitch, a name that means City of Love. Like his predecessors, he ascended to his unique position of responsibility in 1950 as the result of his lineage, which can be traced back to the legendary David, King of Israel.
Somehow the presence of the man sends out an emanation of mystical quality that touches people who have never heard of him.
In the case of the Rebbe, he did take an interest in far more than the orthodox religious, ceremonial, and spiritual values. He was interested in seeing that the lives as lived in the real world were improved. And that, I thought, was quite unusual.
To date, more than 200 volumes of his teachings have been published in 10 languages. Before suffering a stroke less than a year ago, a condition from which he continues to make a brave and remarkable recovery, he would greet thousands of people from all over the world and every walk of life who would visit him each Sunday.
And what the Lubavitcher movement has been doing under the leadership of the Lubavitcher Rebbe has been to stop the fraying and to bring Jews back into the fold. And I was particularly impressed with that. I value it enormously.
He has succeeded to win the hearts and minds of practically many hundreds of thousands of Jews throughout the world and in Israel because of his love of Jews, because of his compassion, because of his leadership that I consider to be the greatest one in contemporary life.
The Rebbe has never taken a day off and customarily spends most of his time immersed in prayer or study, or can be found tirelessly giving of his counsel and directing Jewish activities. To his thousands of admirers, he is a symbol of faith, righteousness, and dedication, and a trusted advisor who is equally loved for his warmth and gentleness.
He's reached out, as few other Jewish leaders have done, beyond the Jewish world, calling on people to pursue religious knowledge and religious values. And in that sense, I think he is one of the great figures of our century.
Having seen the work that the Rebbe has done, Rabbi Greenberg, can you please give us a brief synopsis on the basis of your belief and Judaism's belief in the Mashiach, please?
The belief in the Mashiach, or as some people would like to translate it as the Messiah, surprisingly enough to many people, is a patently Jewish belief. It is Jewish in its origin. It's rooted in the Torah, 5 books of Moses. The works of the prophets are filled with mention of the Messianic dream and hope and reality. Throughout Jewish history, Jews have hoped and anticipated the coming and the arrival of Mashiach. Now, what is Mashiach? Mashiach is the belief, and I should add that it's considered to be not just a belief, but one of the most central beliefs of Judaism. There are 13 principles of faith, of which the belief in the Mashiach is the 12th principle. But what does this belief entail? It entails the belief that a time will come when the Jewish people will be liberated from their exile, from their suffering, from persecution, from their alienation, from their diaspora condition, and they will all be liberated from that by a Jewish leader, a human being, a person who will take them out of this state, and in doing so will rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, the temple that was built by King Solomon, then by the Jews who returned from the Babylonian exile. But both of those temples were destroyed. He will rebuild the temple and gather all of the Jews from all parts of the world, bring them back to Israel, and then usher in an age of peace when all nations, the Mashiach is not just for the Jewish people, but he will bring to the world a state of awareness of God's presence that will unify the world so that everyone serves God as a united humanity. What has happened now is that the Rebbe, among all of his different mitzvah campaigns, where he tried to enhance Jewish belief, and the Rebbe, of course, has always emphasized the importance of the belief in Mashiach. Now the Rebbe has introduced a new campaign, we could say, a new era, in fact, the Rebbe said, has been inaugurated, and that is, we have reached the time of redemption. We are on the threshold of redemption, and Mashiach's coming is imminent. And the Rebbe has launched a campaign to spread the knowledge that, first of all, Mashiach's coming and the redemption is imminent, and secondly, we should familiarize ourselves with Mashiach, what Mashiach is all about, what it means, by studying the Jewish tradition's view and concept of Mashiach, and by translating that knowledge in an awareness of this new age, and that it should affect our behavior. So that, in a nutshell, is what Mashiach is, what the belief in Mashiach is, and what the Rebbe's Mashiach campaign is all about.
Most importantly, we're talking about peace on earth. That's very clear in the prophets. Nations will not wage war. There will be peace. So if you're talking about peace, it has to affect everybody.
Is it incumbent on Jews to believe in the Mashiach as a necessity, or is it a mitzvah?
A number of our sages sought to find it in different mitzvahs. One great sage of the 12th century, the Samak, said that in actuality, the commandment to believe in God, the first commandment, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am God, your God, that implicitly includes the belief in Mashiach. How is that? Why? Because look at the world we're in. There's suffering, there's tragedy, there is pain, there is war, there is evil. If we are to believe in a God who created this world to be left at this present state, what can this God be? How can we accept realistically a belief in God who has created an entity where people continuously suffer? Now think about it. We don't have less suffering today or less war today than existed 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, or 3,000 years ago. It is a condition of man, or so it appears, from the beginning of time. So we cannot accept a God seriously and say, God put man here to suffer and sits back and enjoys man's suffering, or that's his purpose and intent in creation. That's an absurdity. So if we're going to believe in God, we have to believe in a good God. Where do you have a good God? How do you have a good God? When you look around. So you've got to come to the next step and say, if I believe in God, then I must also believe that there will be a time when war will be eradicated, suffering will be eradicated, evil will be banished, and then not only will it be a world which will be dominated by goodness, but we will gain an insight as to why all of the previous time was also truly good. The suffering had meaning, the tragedy had meaning, so it really puts meaning into everything. And unless you have the concept of Mashiach, you cannot be realistic about your belief in God.
Rabbi Nu, I'd like to ask you, the concept of Mashiach, are we dealing with a human being? Are we dealing with an angel, a spirit, a phenomena out of this world, or something else?
Certainly Mashiach is a human being and a great Jewish leader. In fact, you might describe him as the Moses par excellence. But as mentioned earlier, not only for the Jewish people, but eventually to emerge as the recognized leader of the entire world, the focus of the entire world. The individual who brings out the best in us, communicates the word of God, inspires, teaches. So central to Jewish faith is that he's a human being, and in fact he has a particular pedigree and must trace his ancestry to King David.
You just got to look into in Tanakh, in the Bible itself. The prophets are replete with a reference to an individual as being the Messiah. That's why Maimonides is very clear. Moshiach is an individual, and he is emphatic about the obligation for a Jew to believe in a Moshiach, not merely a Messianic era. It's wonderful to believe in a Messianic era. That's good too. But that's not the Jewish belief. The Jewish belief is in a person who is Mashiach. You've got to look at the law. Maimonides says it right there, and the basis is throughout the Bible you have it.
But for me to understand, the Mashiach is to arrive in Jerusalem, flying in from a cloud, somehow landing on a donkey, walking through Jerusalem. There seems to be something more than physical implied in that.
Well, there's a lot of imagery that we read about in even biblical writings and in Talmudic and Midrashic literature that have misled people into thinking that the Mashiach is less than or more than human. Mashiach, by definition, has to be human, not just because that's what it says in the Torah, but because that's totally consistent with the totality of Jewish ideology. We believe that God could have created the world the way he wanted the world without people. He created the world with people, with humans, giving them free choice so that they, of their own volition, do what God wants them to do to transform the world and make the world that it was intended to be. So we had a Moses. God could have given the Torah to the Jews without Moses. He could have liberated them from Egypt without Moses. We had a Joshua who brought them into the Holy Land. We didn't need a human being to do that. Do we need King David to build or King Solomon to build the first temple? Obviously, everything that God wants the world to become, he wants it to become through us, through people. And people are able to function when they're coordinated, when they're united, and they have a leader. Just like the human body has a brain, the brain coordinates the entire body. It's not as if the brain is an independent entity unto itself and the rest of the body works separately, but everything works together with the brain coordinating, giving energy, giving inspiration to the rest of the body. Jewish people always had leaders that were that inspiration, were the coordinators, and Mashiach is just the ultimate leader that the Jewish people will have, who will coordinate the efforts of the entire world, with God's help, of course, with God's inspiration, with God's power, but with his own greatness and his own achievements that he was able to develop through his whole career as a leader, and that will change the world. That will bring in and usher in the Messianic age. So there's nothing novel to the idea that a human being is the one who's going to make the changes in the world. It's just that this human being is going to make the ultimate change to bring in the Messianic age.
Just to reiterate what Rabbi Greenberg is saying, the concept that Mashiach is a human being means that he changes the world, but before that, every individual person changes the world. We can't sit back and say, okay, God, you do it for us. Bring the Messianic era. And that sort of is the implied feeling behind that concept of a Messianic era. It's going to happen out there someplace. That isn't the way it is. God says, man, I've put you on the earth. You make Moshiach. You make the Messianic era. Things that you do in the world matter, make a difference. And so this is somewhat symbolized by the fact that we have an individual as Mashiach, because we as individuals work towards this goal, and then Mashiach comes and alters the world radically to bring it to its final state of completion.
The Mashiach himself is a wonderful concept. And if we as individuals have to bring Mashiach, there were others in the past that proclaimed other men as being Mashiach, for example, Bar Kochba, or Shabbatai Tzvi. And if we're going to take the same initiative now and declare anybody...
I just got to stop you there. Don't compare Shabbatai Tzvi and Bar Kochba. Bar Kochba was a legitimate individual. Rabbi Akiva, no less, was the one that designated him as the one who was going to be Mashiach.
I didn't equate them.
I understand. I don't think the two should be put together. Rabbi Akiva was the authority of the world, at the Jewish world at the time. And he wasn't just making a mistake by pointing out Bar Kochba. There was legitimacy behind it. In fact, the whole basis of the laws Maimonides brings about Mashiach is built on the way Rabbi Akiva dealt with Bar Kochba. Shabbatai Tzvi was a charlatan. That's different.
What's different today that so many people all over the world are starting to question Mashiach? Who is he? What is he? What's happening? What's different?
Well, first of all, I mentioned before that the Rebbe has articulated the Mashiach campaign and has done so in terms of the imminence of Mashiach. The Mashiach's coming is imminent.
Before you get into that, first of all, people forgot about Mashiach. Come into the United States in any city you want, into any synagogue you want, and talk about Mashiach 3 years ago, and people would say, who, what, where, what's lacking? Thank God we have prosperity.
Maybe they
kids
gave
are
up.
Healthy. No, it's forgotten about. No one's thought about it. America made people forget about Mashiach. When you had oppression in Europe, when you had constant oppression, so then everyone was saying, oh, Mashiach is going to come and redeem us from this oppression. We live in a land of freedom and plentifulness. Why worry about Mashiach? What's he going to do? I'll have another chicken in the pot. No. So people forgot about Mashiach. That's really the truth.
What you're saying is true. There's a kernel of truth in what you're saying. That since
a kernel only.
Right.
One at
since
a time,
the Holocaust, since the Holocaust, when number one, Jews were so disillusioned, people were waiting for God to save them, and it didn't happen. And then they come to America and other free countries in the Western world, and they have prosperity. Then, of course, it's natural for people to forget about Mashiach. And the Rebbe activated that belief and reminded us of that. That's true, but there's much more than that. The Rebbe's campaign is not just, you know what, there's an old concept in Judaism that says you should believe in Mashiach, you forgot about it, I'm there to remind you. It's not even that the Rebbe reminded us that we're supposed to wait for Mashiach's coming every day, and we're supposed to expect him to come every day. And if he doesn't come, we're supposed to still wait for his coming. That's how Maimonides formulated it. But it's more than that. Let me just finish. Let me finish.
From that point.
The Rebbe has said that we have entered into a new period. This is the time of your redemption, that Mashiach's coming is imminent. And he made it very clear that this is a concept that the previous Rebbe referred to during the Holocaust, and he said that Mashiach's coming is imminent, but the previous Rebbe added to it, la'alter l'tshuva, the Jews still have to change their ways. They're still, he used the analogy of a garment, uniform with buttons. The buttons are already sewn. All that has to be done is the buttons have to be polished. And the Rebbe had said, throughout his leadership, his tenure as Rebbe, for the last 43 years, that yeah, we still have to finish polishing the buttons. But then the last few years, the Rebbe changed that, and he said, we've already completed that task. We've already polished the buttons. We've done all that we have to do. The world has undergone, in spite of what you said before, that we're living in a very evil world, that is the way we see it, perhaps because we focus on all the negative things. But the world has changed irreversibly for the good. We don't see it because that's part of the challenge of life, and we're still in exile.
We do see it.
We see it in different places. We see the crumbling of the communist empire. Right, but I'm saying we still see plenty of evil in the world. But the good is cumulative, and all of this is pointing to the fact that there's nothing left for us to do in terms of changing the world, that it's going to make much of a difference if we keep on doing this. The Rebbe had said that all that we have to do now is to bring Mashiach, is to accept Mashiach. In other words, the focus has changed from doing mitzvahs, doing good deeds.
But you're not implying that there's a slackening in the need to observe all of the mitzvahs.
No, you didn't let me finish. What I was saying is that instead of emphasizing, let's do a mitzvah, because if we do a mitzvah, it's going to make the world a better world, and the better the world will become, the more likely Mashiach's coming will be. That was true until the Rebbe's Mashiach campaign. What the Rebbe did was to intensify mitzvahs, was to say that now the mitzvah is not just to make some type of an effect on the world. Every mitzvah is, even though it's one little mitzvah, it makes some type of an impact. But now our mitzvahs are ways of actually introducing Mashiach into the world, opening up our eyes. The Rebbe used that expression, that we have to now open our eyes to see the reality, to see how the world has really changed beneath the surface. On the surface, we don't necessarily
doing
see
mitzvahs is fine, and nobody, religious Jewish people will agree doing mitzvahs is one thing. But what does talking about Mashiach have to do with doing mitzvahs?
Because that creates the awareness that Mashiach's coming is imminent, and if we know that in a very few moments we are going to be standing before the most illustrious person in the world, before God himself, we're going to change the way we behave. We're going to behave.
So we're supposed to feel guilty that we're not doing something, so that the Mashiach will be
why
there?
emphasize guilt?
No,
Let's emphasize
a positive motivation is what we're talking about. If you would know this is your last chance to earn $1 million, what would you do? You'd run. You wouldn't wait.
But they're going to give me the $1 million tomorrow anyway.
No, they're not. What we have when Mashiach comes is based on what we've accomplished now. That's the whole emphasis we were talking about before. We make it because we make it by what we do now.
Rebbe is actually saying, to open up our eyes and that we will see it. And I think today, we ask why now, there is a world consciousness that's unprecedented in history, that we are all one entity. That what I do in my little corner is not isolated and affects the entire world. There is a consciousness today that we don't have the answer. All of the isms are bankrupt. There is a desperate search for leadership, a desperate search for the answer, whether it's the economy, the ecology, inner well-being. People are open like never before to hear a voice of reason, a humble voice, a voice that speaks authoritatively the word of God. Whereas years ago, we were convinced that give us time, we'll figure it out. Today, that consciousness has changed and it's gone forever, and that's a Messianic consciousness.
Yeah, but what I wanted to say before is that just because we have this Messianic consciousness doesn't mean that we stop doing mitzvahs. On the contrary.
On the contrary, sure.
That by us doing mitzvahs and doing them with more feeling, with more depth, with more completeness, that is what enables us to open up our eyes and to accept Mashiach. So it's not that mitzvahs have less of a meaning. On the contrary, we are now in a new age. We don't see it and feel it. Why? Because our eyes are closed. We need more awareness of Mashiach by studying about Mashiach, by strengthening our faith in it, of course, but also by everything else that we do Jewishly. Living with Mashiach means that we live in the way that we know that we would live if we would see that the world has changed.
The fact that we are focused on observance of mitzvahs, and the Rebbe has emphasized not just don't we slacken, but we intensify our observance of mitzvahs. This is what distinguishes radically the Mashiach campaign of the Rebbe from all other things that have happened before. When you look at any kind of Messianic movement that existed, you will find that the focus is, we don't have to plan for the future. It's all going to be over. We don't have to do anything now. Just sit and wait, and it's all going to happen for you. That's contrary to what the Rebbe has said, contrary to Judaism in general. But you see that within the movement that the Rebbe has launched to bring Moshiach closer and to give Jews a sense that they're living in a time where Mashiach is imminent, the Rebbe has said, do. You can't sit and wait. In fact, the Rebbe wants us to plan for 5 years from now, and 10 years from now, and 20 years from now. We plan today, as if God forbid Mashiach isn't going to come for 25 years. If that's what's required today in my planning, that's what I do. Because it's a drive which is not one that says, wait for someone else to do it for you.
Mashiach will definitely come whether we're ready for him or not. There's a time, a fixed time, and the Rebbe has said that we're very close to that time. It's imminent. He didn't give us the exact date, but we know that it's very, very soon. So he will come even if we don't do any more. There's no question about that. But when Mashiach comes, we're going to continue doing mitzvahs. So we have to get ourselves ready for that new
Excuse me,
dimension.
I just want to
of
ask
mitzvahs.
something though. When you say when Mashiach comes, is Mashiach going to come, or is he here? And as representatives of the Lubavitch movement, do you believe that the Rebbe is Mashiach?
Well, you asked the question, is Mashiach here and is he going to come? The answer to both questions is yes. He is here and he's going to come.
How can he do the same at the same time? I mean, either he's here or he's not.
A very good question.
No, a very important point there, because that's where there is so much confusion.
Perhaps we need a little background in the whole subject. The Talmud explains that there appears to be contradictions in the Bible as to how Mashiach and when Mashiach is going to come. For example, in Isaiah the prophet says, God is speaking. God says Mashiach will come at a fixed time. I will hasten his coming. So which way is it? Does it come at a fixed time, or does God hasten his coming? The prophet Zechariah describes Mashiach as coming, as a poor man coming on a donkey. The prophet Daniel describes Mashiach coming spectacularly, miraculously on the clouds of heaven. So which way is it going to be? So the Talmud answers and says it depends. If the Jewish people are especially meritorious, then Mashiach could have come at any given point in history. And then Mashiach's coming would have been instantaneous, miraculous. The redemption and the Messianic age would have come hand in hand with the emergence of the Mashiach figure. And there wouldn't be any debate as to who Mashiach is, because it happens together with godly enlightenment and revelation. So that's what the prophet Daniel is talking about. And that's what the prophet Isaiah means when he says he will come earlier if the Jewish people are especially deserving. However, as mentioned earlier, there is a fixed time. A fixed time. If the redemption comes because the time has arrived, then it happens in a natural, gradual way, evolving over time. That's what the prophet Zechariah means when he says, a poor person riding on a donkey, and the commentaries explain, that means in an earthy, slow, natural way. Now within this natural way, and here's where Maimonides comes in, because Maimonides, who is the voice of Jewish law, describes the lowest common denominator. He describes, if you like, the worst case scenario, when Mashiach comes because the time has arrived and not earlier because of special merit. Briefly stated, the two stages are as follows. In stage number one, in the period prior to the redemption, while during the exile, the Mashiach figure emerges gradually over time and is even identified as such, as Mashiach, during the exile period by virtue of the fact that he's met certain specific criteria set forth in Torah, which we'll elaborate upon in a moment.
There always is a belief that there is someone designated as a potential Mashiach in every generation.
Yeah.
All right, even before we get into any actual movement there, simply, in every generation, God says, if this is going to be the generation that merits the coming of Mashiach, that's the one. That's what you find in the Talmud.
However, this potential Mashiach may not necessarily exhibit any signs by which it can be identified.
Correct.
In fact, it can be an obscure, unknown, disease-stricken villager, which in our tradition, there are stories that the potential Mashiach of a given generation was an obscure, unknown person. However, when the time arrives, then the Mashiach emerges on the world scene, again, during the time of exile, and is identified by specific criteria. That's stage one. At this stage, Jewish law describes him as presumed to be Mashiach, because we don't know whether or not the time has arrived, whether or not he's going to follow through with the actual redemption.
That's how Maimonides characterizes it, that he is, even if he fails to actually bring the redemption, he's still regarded as a righteous
leader.
descendant and leader of the house of David.
And probably the potential Mashiach too, had the people been worthy.
Those are the words of Maimonides
Right.
in his code of law. So that's a very, very fundamental...
This is a law.
So let me interrupt,
Yeah.
please. So I assume that you believe, from previous discussions, that the Rebbe is Mashiach.
Let's finish describing the law and then we'll apply it to the Rebbe. Right.
Okay.
Now, again, when the time of the actual redemption arrives, the presumed to be Moshiach, because the time has arrived, will in fact follow through with the redemption. What is the redemption? In its legal definition, redemption means the building of the third temple in Jerusalem, the ingathering of all Jews to Israel, and then begins the Messianic era, when Mashiach ushers in an eternal era of godly enlightenment for all humankind.
And peace.
Of course, world peace, and end to suffering and misery and sickness, and ultimately even death. That's already even a third stage. So in summary, what we're saying now is this. At all times, there exists an individual who is the potential Mashiach. Possibly impossible to even identify. But he's waiting there in the wings. If the people are worthy, he is revealed. And if the people are worthy, Mashiach can come at any time. There comes, however, the point where the fixed time that God had designated before creation arrives. Then, if the redemption is going to come, because the time has come, then the redemption will evolve gradually and naturally in the two stages we described.
Why do you believe that the Rebbe is Mashiach?
Well, I think that we've already established the basis for assuming that the Rebbe is Mashiach. This is a belief that not only people from Lubavitch, but there are many people who do not consider themselves Lubavitcher Hasidim. It has nothing to do with the belief that it's my leader or my favorite great Jewish rabbi, great Jewish scholar that is the Mashiach. But what it is based on the fact that there has to be a Mashiach in every generation. And this was an exercise that the rabbis of the Talmud conducted, trying to identify who was the person who would be worthy to be Mashiach. So in that sense, to identify someone as Mashiach is part of Jewish tradition. One of the great Sephardic encyclopedists of the last century writes, in every generation, it was assessed, it was determined who would be the Mashiach of that generation. So this is not something novel. As far as I'm concerned, if people would say, you know what, I think that my rabbi is the potential Mashiach, I wouldn't have any problems with that. If they feel that way, let them believe that. I believe differently.
Maybe we can,
but it goes beyond that.
Let's just interject here for just one moment. You've got to separate what the Rebbe's campaign is for Mashiach and what individual Hasidim believe. Any individual Chassid has a right to look in the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, and say, the Code of Jewish Law says that this and this and this and this, and therefore I look outside, it's light enough, I can say the Shema in the morning, because the Code of Jewish Law gave me the way of identifying it. That I can do. Anybody can do that. Personally, I look at the thing logically, I look at the Rambam, I look at the Rebbe, those are the conclusions that I'm led to. But the Rebbe himself...
It's a little bit more than a personal...
Wait, just one second. The Rebbe himself, though, in his concept of bringing Jews to the belief in Mashiach, of declaring that the redemption is imminent, has never said, I am, or we need to believe that this person or that person is Mashiach.
I'm holding here a book of Jewish law, Maimonides, the laws of Mashiach. And here is a description of Mashiach in the period of exile just prior to redemption. As mentioned earlier, he is a great leader, a descendant of King David. It's no secret that the Schneerson family are descendants of King David. Steeped in the knowledge of Torah, as Rabbi Greenberg mentioned earlier, the Rebbe's scholarship is simply awesome. Perhaps we should point out here too, it's not just the scope of the Rebbe's knowledge, but his ability to reveal new insights on every level of Torah, and moreover, to unite all these disciplines, to show the synthesis, the oneness of Torah, from the Kabbalistic mystical dimension to the legal or plain straightforward level. The Rebbe has shown innovative insights into all areas of Torah in a manner that's quite unparalleled in history. He mentions here the next description, involved in the study of, in the observance of the commandments. and compels or influences all the Jewish people to walk in its path and strengthen its breaches. In terms of strengthening its breaches, this implies here special emphasis or campaigns on particular areas in Jewish law that require it to be bolstered and mended. The key point is mentioned earlier here too is that he reaches out to all Jews and creates a direction, a renaissance. Who more than the Rebbe today is singularly responsible for stirring the consciousness of the Jewish people. Whether people even know that the Rebbe exists or not, they are influenced by him. The Rebbe has brought Judaism to the streets. The Rebbe has instilled pride and joy in the observance of Judaism. So if you have a... Yeah.
Rabbi, no, there's no debate about that.
Yeah.
The question, though, is if someone wants to say, well, I don't see it that way.
Fine. We're explaining why those...
Yeah, I understand. Well, there's it too.
Yeah.
There's no imperative to that. Fine. It's a way of looking at it, a valid way. Personally, I happen to go along with that. But I don't think that that's got to be a focus, as if that somehow, if you want to get involved in the Mashiach campaign, if you want to feel that Mashiach is imminently coming, you somehow have to, you're coerced somehow, compelled to be able to, it doesn't have to be so.
The question was, why do people believe that the Rebbe is Mashiach?
Fine.
And I would think also that if someone is convinced of the imminence of Mashiach, he's going to look for the most likely candidate, and probably would come to the conclusion that it's the Rebbe.
Yeah, I think there's a misconception over here. There are people who see the Rambam and without any hesitation they say, oh, obviously this is referring to the Rebbe. But if you want to argue, if you want to debate the point, I'm sure there are people who are going to say, well, I can find another interpretation of the Rambam, some Maimonides' words. But that's not the point. The point over here is we know that Mashiach's coming is imminent. The Rebbe had said so. Other great Jewish leaders have said that we're very close to the coming of Mashiach. So it's obvious that since there is a Mashiach in our generation, we have to point out who it could be.
I have taught Maimonides to many people, and I never said a word about it. I said, here it is.
And what do they say?
And they go, well, based on who could be around today, and they have said, they think the Lubavitcher Rebbe, yeah, that's the most logical one, okay?
Obviously.
But that's a different focus than let someone make his own decision, coming to his own conclusion.
No one is imposing this and saying, you must follow this interpretation of the Rambam or else we're going to excommunicate you. What we're saying is that you must at least respect the fact that if someone believes in Mashiach's coming and someone believes that Mashiach's coming is imminent, that it's only natural for them, whether they're obligated or it's natural and legitimate for them to speculate who it would be.
Why is it imminent? Excuse me. Why do we
already
have to
established
think
that before, that the Rebbe said, based on all the things that are happening in the world, and based on the fact that we already achieved everything that we have to achieve to bring about this coming.
Because the Rebbe says it has to happen?
No, there are two sides to it. Number one, the Rebbe who is attuned to spiritual matters sees the spiritual equation in the world, okay, and recognizes that we are imminent to the point of Mashiach. Number two, world events tell us that too. This has been extraordinary couple of years, and we're sort of into it, we don't think about it. The collapse of communism, which was the epitome of atheism. That's it, that was atheism, disintegrated before our eyes. Build down of military, the military is being used now more for peace than for anything else. These are signs, and the Rebbe has pointed out that these are signs. So that's the legitimate basis on which we say the Rebbe says Mashiach is imminent. And the Rebbe's track record, when the Rebbe says something, it isn't just a cavalier statement. The Rebbe has said things in the past. What he said happened. So we have pretty good basis for saying that. But look, again, I mean, if someone doesn't want to accept the Mashiach is coming imminently, but think about Mashiach, learn about Mashiach, you'll come to that conclusion yourself.
So that's irrelevant, whether you believe it's imminent or not. We believe that it's imminent.
And legitimately so.
And legitimately so. And even if you wouldn't have heard the Rebbe saying that the time of redemption is imminent, Jews had to always hope and wait and expect Mashiach to come any day and every day. So to say that you feel and you hope that Mashiach will come that day even before the Rebbe's campaign was totally legitimate. So especially now when there's...
Wait. Obligatory. Let's put this in perspective. Okay. Not just legitimate. No. We're obligated to believe and wait for Mashiach every single day.
Especially now. Now, if you know that it's imminent and you know that there is someone who is capable of being Mashiach, who is worthy of being Mashiach, then of course it's only natural for you to speculate. Are you obligated to speculate who Mashiach is? We could even argue that point, that if the Rambam, if Maimonides gives us the signs and he says, this is how you determine who Mashiach is, and obviously it's a legitimate exercise to try to figure out who is the presumed Mashiach, certainly to figure out who is the worthy candidate for Mashiach. So that
perhaps more than
so
just,
that most people, let me just finish. Most people, if you present to them the fact that there is a Mashiach in this generation, and that Mashiach is not
potential,
potential, but that person is not just an unknown quantity. It's a person who has leadership qualities, who's doing all the things that the Maimonides points out. Whether they feel it fits into every little detail or not, I feel it does. But whether they feel, they still agree that the Rebbe is the most likely person to be the Mashiach. I don't think there's any quarrel about that, and I agree with what you said before. I was teaching a class in this Rambam. I wasn't even interested in pointing out that the Rebbe is the Mashiach in that particular class. And someone said to me, oh, is this why Lubavitcher say the Rebbe is Mashiach?
Let's just conclude here the description. And finally, someone who wages God's war. As mentioned earlier, many of the commentaries explain this means not only physical wars, which he may get involved as well in military advice, which the Rebbe has over the years. But it means also the survival of the Jewish people materially and spiritually. And it's a war.
It means more than just the Jewish people. And I think in this point it's rather unique. For years, for 2,000 years, Jewish leadership could not carry over to the non-Jewish world because it was dangerous. A Jewish leader couldn't get up and say, I am going to try and bring morality to the world. Today, for the first time, it's possible. A Jewish leader can do that because of the open society we live in, and the Rebbe has done that. The United States Congress, numerous times, the former President Reagan a couple of times, declared that the United States is built on the basis of the Noahide laws of morality. That could be a meaning of Yilchud Milchemes Hashem, that he fights the battle.
That's certainly one aspect of it.
In that respect, the Rebbe has done something which no one has done for many, many years.
Everything you've described speaks of the qualifications from what the Mashiach is expected to do and how we might be able to identify him. And I come back to saying, well, it sounds like he has the potential to be Mashiach.
1 second. The final words here are, if you see someone with these qualities, you are to presume this person is Mashiach.
Okay.
And the reason it's a presumption, it's not a potential. This person is Mashiach. The reason it's a presumption, as we explained earlier, is because we have to see whether he follows through with the redemption or not. Because we cannot, under normal circumstances, be certain that the time of redemption has arrived. Today is unique, inasmuch that the Rebbe has told us that the time of redemption has arrived. And all of us, this generation, is going to merit the wonderful blessing of the Messianic era. So when we see someone who fulfills these qualifications in stage 1, it's actually more than a presumption. It's pretty much a certainty because the Rebbe has revealed that time is now, so we are certain that he's going to carry through with what he's begun till now in the exile period for the past 42 years, bring it to its conclusion, and usher in the Messianic era.
מאמין באמונו של אמו בביאת המשיח אני מאמין באמונו של אמו בביאת המשיח אני מאמין משיח 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 אוי 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 אם כל זה יחכה לו בכל יום שיבוא ישמע אם כל זה יחכה לו בכל יום שיבוא אני מאמין באמונו של אמו בביאת המשיח